Hey guys, welcome to the Dynasty Trading Room YouTube channel. Today we're going to be talking about 6 players you should be buying in Dynasty Fantasy Football post free agency. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. First, let's talk about new Chargers running back Najee Harris, who just signed with the team on a 1-year deal. Although many don't have a high opinion of him, posting at least 1,000 rushing yards in each of the first 4 seasons of your career is a pretty impressive feat. On the Steelers, he didn't have a bad offensive line he was running behind, but I think after signing with the Chargers, his situation gets a whole lot better. Now, this could all completely change if the Chargers draft a running back in the first or second round of the draft. Right now, Najee Harris is the top running back of the depth chart. He no longer has to split carries with Jaylen Warren, and he should be the every down back if he's given the chance. Now, Harris might not be the most talented player in the league, but you gotta admit, this is a pretty good situation in terms of what kind of volume he could get. I think Harris could be a sneaky top 20 fantasy running back if he's given the bulk of the carries in 2025. They didn't invest a ton of money in him, but everyone's saying that Jim Harbaugh has liked this dude since day one. If Najee Harris steps up, he could be the bell cow running back next year. Not to mention, the Chargers just signed former Eagles guard Mekhi Becton to a 2-year deal to continue their solid offseason. He was one of the most important parts to Philadelphia's run game last season that allowed Saquon Barkley to go over 2,000 yards rushing. Now, I'm not saying Harris is going to have that type of season, but it definitely bodes well that Becton was a big part of that running game and now goes to LA to block for Najee Harris. With a pretty good offensive line in front of him, including Joe Alt, one of the top picks in last year's draft, Najee Harris has a good situation around him to be a productive running back in 2025. Again, all this will totally change if the Chargers draft a running back, but if they don't, Harris is a safe bet to be productive in fantasy. Another player whose dynasty outlook I really like is Buccaneers wide receiver Jalen McMillan. He came on really strong at the end of last year, scoring 7 receiving touchdowns in his final 5 regular season games. He had a fantastic rookie year, especially down the stretch, and I think he could be an integral part of this Buccaneers offense moving forward. And with Baker Mayfield playing elite football, he should be a target in dynasty leagues. I think he might be a bit underrated in Dynasty, especially because Chris Godwin was just re-signed on a multi-year contract. But we have to remember that it's possible for these 3 receivers to all share the field at the same time. And veteran wide receivers Chris Godwin and Mike Evans might not be there forever. McMillan's a talented receiver, and he's going to find his way onto the field. He's very young at only 23 years old, and he showed a lot of talent and a lot of chemistry with quarterback Baker Mayfield. If you can get him for a discount after Godwin's new contract, you should. He's a big sleeper for 2025 and is the wide receiver 3 for a high-volume passing team. I'm not willing to pass up on this much young talent, and you shouldn't either. McMillan can win from the slot and on the outside. He's really good at adjusting to the football, he runs great routes, he's got really sure hands, especially in the red zone. If he continues to be a threat in the end zone, he could be a big-time fantasy receiver next season, and is really going under the radar right now. The next player I want to talk about is Marvin Mims Jr., wide receiver for the Denver Broncos. In his final 2 regular season games, Marvin Mims posted 216 receiving yards and 4 total touchdowns. That's a pretty ridiculous number for just 2 games combined. Like McMillan, he came on strong in the last stretch of the year and should be a good wide receiver moving forward in Dynasty because of his age and his talent. An important piece of this is that the Broncos didn't bring in much competition in free agency to compete at the wide receiver position. Now, they still could draft a receiver, but Mims is looking like the early favorite to be the team's wide receiver 2, which would be huge for him in 2025. He's a big play threat and one of Bo Nix's favorite targets down the field. The team obviously trusts him if they haven't brought in any competition, and his age and talent makes me think he could be a really underrated wide receiver next season, and his price shouldn't be too steep in Dynasty leagues yet. Mims has finally earned his role in this offense and should be a huge part of the team's game plan moving forward with quarterback Bo Nix. Next is Caleb Williams, quarterback for the Chicago Bears. After posting a solid rookie season, after being selected number 1 overall in the 2024 NFL Draft, Williams is gearing up for a breakout sophomore campaign. I believe in new head coach Ben Johnson, who excelled as the offensive coordinator in Detroit. He already has solid weapons around him with wide receivers DJ Moore and Rome Odunze. But the team has also acquired offensive linemen Joe Thuney, Jonah Jackson, and Drew Dahlman, who will all hopefully fix the team's biggest issue, the offensive line. Caleb Williams was sacked 68 times during his rookie season, which was the most in the entire league. He still managed to show off his incredible talent, and I think he's going to be a top 12 quarterback in fantasy in 2025. I totally believe in Caleb Williams' talent, and Ben Johnson was able to help his quarterbacks excel in Detroit and put some great pieces around him. I think the exact same thing is going to happen, and it's already happening in Chicago with Caleb Williams, the offensive line, and the pass-catching group around him. Look for Williams to break out in year 2 and maybe even become a top 10 fantasy quarterback as Chicago continues their great offseason. Next, we have Jackson Smith-Njigba, wide receiver for the Seattle Seahawks. His dynasty stock really fell after Geno Smith was traded away to the Raiders for a 3rd-round pick. But Seattle quickly replaced their quarterback with Sam Darnold, former starter for the Minnesota Vikings, on a 3-year, $100.5 million contract. If Seattle can put together a good offensive line, I think Darnold can have a really successful tenure in New York, and Smith-Njigba will be a huge part of that because I know he'll track a ton of targets from his new quarterback. Seattle just signed wide receiver Cooper Kupp to a 3-year, $45 million deal. While I think Kupp will be solid in Seattle, I don't think he's going to supplant Smith-Njigba as the wide receiver 1. He struggled to stay healthy over the last few seasons, but I think he'll settle in as a nice wide receiver 2 for the team. Like I said, I think JSN is the wide receiver 1, and he absolutely broke out this season, leading the team in targets and yards, above receivers like DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Some managers in your league may be wary of Smith-Njigba after the departure of Geno Smith. You can capitalize off this and maybe get him at a discount for what his price would have been a couple weeks ago. Again, this is pretty contingent on Seattle putting together a good offensive line. It was really bad this past season. It made Geno Smith's life a lot harder, and we know that Sam Darnold can sometimes crumble under pressure from the pass rush. But if they can protect him like I hope they can, JSN should be the main benefactor from Sam Darnold coming to Seattle. We saw how productive those Minnesota wide receivers were in fantasy this past year, so expect the same production from JSN if the team can make the right moves this offseason to promote their offense. A couple days ago, quarterback Justin Fields agreed with the New York Jets on a 2-year, $40 million contract. I think this is a win-win for both sides. The Jets get to see if he can be their quarterback of the future, and Justin Fields gets to be the starter again after finding some success in the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2024. Fields gets to reunite with his college teammate Garrett Wilson at receiver, and a solid group of pass-catching running backs should help out Fields as well. Hopefully Fields and new head coach Aaron Glenn can bring some change to the long-time disappointing Jets. They still have some solid players on both sides of the ball, even after disappointing 2024. Easy to forget that in 2022, Justin Fields put up over 1,100 rushing yards, 8 rushing touchdowns, and finished as the QB7 overall in fantasy. If he's given a full season as a starter, maybe he can pick up some of that production again and be one of the best quarterbacks in fantasy football. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be top 10 or anything, but I think he's a serious sleeper and can finish as a top 20 quarterback with definite rushing upside to finish in the top 15. While he may not be a buy low, I think the expectations may be a little too low coming onto Fields because of the Jets' history. He's getting another chance to start after Chicago, where he did show some promise, so I'm willing to give Justin Fields another shot in 2025. Yes, it's the next day I change clothes. Don't worry about it. When talking about players like this, they're incredibly valuable in Dynasty because trading for these players will add a ton of value to your team, especially because they're buy low candidates. Players like JSN, Jalen McMillan, guys that have seen their stock fall in recent weeks because of moves made by their team, if they end up breaking out in year 2 or year 3, like I think they will, they could be fantastic values on your roster for a lower price than they should be going for. Whereas a player like Justin Fields can help you immensely in Superflex. Having an extra quarterback to plug into your lineup that has a ton of rushing upside that you can get for a pretty low price because, again, his dynasty value isn't the highest right now because he's not really a franchise quarterback at the moment. If he ends up playing well in New York with Garrett Wilson, with Breece Hall, if you traded for him before, he is a fantastic value again to have on your roster. And a guy like Fields with a history of really good fantasy production, especially on the rushing side of things, is a great player to have in your roster. Even if he is a high-risk fantasy player, it's obvious the Jets trust him to at least come in for 1 year and be their unquestioned starter. Caleb Williams may not be a buy low in Dynasty. Personally, I think it's going to be way harder to trade for Caleb Williams after the 2025 season than it is right now. I think after a year with Ben Johnson and that offensive line, his dynasty value is going to skyrocket, allowing him to be selected even higher and his trade value raising as well. And players on this list like Marvin Mims, who could be stepping into bigger roles, he's still extremely young and would be fantastic to have so early on in his career with a young quarterback who loves to throw him the ball downfield. And it's obvious the Broncos trust him to be the wide receiver too, unless they're planning on bringing a receiver in through the draft. But if they don't, he's a fantastic value. All this is to say that searching for these buy low players in Dynasty is a fantastic way to upgrade your lineup for a low price. Adding these quality players is a quick way to get your team to the fantasy championship. I think if you trade for one of these 6 players, it'll help your odds immensely, at least over the next few years. Not all these players are going to break out immediately, but I like their dynasty outlook moving forward with the next 2 to 3 years. Feel free to comment if you disagree with any of my takes. I'd be glad to talk ball with you guys in the comments. And if you like this video, go ahead and like and subscribe for more content like this. I'll see you guys in the next one. I'm Joe, and this is Dynasty Trading Room.